Hello again, Geotech Masters. Welcome to the second episode of our rock classification series. In our last video, we drew the line between soil and rock. Today, we are going to learn what to call the rock once we have found it. We will focus on field identification and geological naming. This episode is very practical. We are moving from definitions to descriptions. We will learn how to look at a rock sample and assign it a correct engineering name. We will use the specific guidance provided in Section 4 of the standard. This ensures that your field logs are consistent and professional. We will also explore Annex A of the standard. This is a very helpful cheat sheet for engineers. It helps us classify rocks based on geological features without needing a degree in pure geology. By the end of this video, you will be able to pick up a rock core and confidently name it. Let's jump in.
Before we start, let's raise a few questions. Have you ever looked at a gray rock and wondered if it was limestone or sandstone? They can look very similar, but they behave very differently under a building. How do you tell them apart quickly in the field? Also, have you noticed that geologists and engineers sometimes use different names? A geologist might use a very complex name based on a rare mineral. An engineer needs a name that tells us about strength and permeability. How do we balance this? Finally, what tools do you actually need in your pocket to identify rocks? Is your eyes enough? We will answer all of these questions today. We will give you a practical system to use on your next site visit. Identifying a rock type requires us to determine several specific things. We cannot just guess, we must be systematic. The first step is determining the genetic group. This means asking, how was this rock formed? Next, we look at the structure. Is the rock bedded? Is it foliated? Or is it massive with no internal patterns? We also look at the texture. This refers to the size, shape, and arrangement of the grains or crystals. In our previous course, Geotechnical Investigation Essentials, we talked about site reconnaissance. When you are walking a site, you look for outcrops to see these large-scale structures. Now we are zooming in to look at the hand specimen to determine grain size and mineralogy. Now, let's look at the